Hello everyone, welcome to my very first YouTube video, making a brand new channel. I had a channel a couple of years ago, but it's abandoned and it was just rock band footage. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the 10 best metal albums of 2017 as voted by me exclusively, because I'm the only one who got a vote on this, because it's my list. You'll notice there's going to be a lot of death metal bands absent from the list. There was such an abundance of death metal this year that was so great and worthy of being on a list. It's actually going to get its own video. So there's going to be a 10 best death metal albums of the year as well. So if you don't hear something in here that you think should have been on it, death metal's getting its own list, partially because it's my favorite subgenre of metal, and it deserves its own list because there's, like I said, there's just so many albums that deserve to be on a list. But can't fit more than 10 on a 10 album list. So let's get started. Number 10, Satan's Hallow with their self-titled album. So important, I believe, to wait until the end of the year to actually do your list. Not because this album came out so late in the year, I don't think it did, but because I didn't find it until about a couple of weeks ago. And it just blew me away so much how great this album is. This is fantastic new wave of traditional heavy metal. It's, you can tell these guys really love Iron Maiden. The singer is a girl. She sounds a little bit like Rush at times, a little bit like Geddy Lee, and that's certainly a good thing. You know, he's a fantastic singer. It's all I could think about when I was listening to this, and it was just blew me away. These guys, like I said, didn't take long to impress me to where I felt, hey, let's get them on the list because they deserve it. Check this album out. Unfortunately, it's not on Spotify, but stream it, buy it, do something, hear it, listen to it. Number 9, Enslaved with E. And admittedly, this is going to make me sound like a complete noob. This is the first Enslaved album I have ever heard. You know, too many bands to get to. It just takes a while. But when this came out, it was getting such praise from everybody that I just had to go listen to it. I thought, you know, it's time. It's time to get with Enslaved. I'm late to this party. And from what I've heard, they used a lot more progressive elements in this album than they had in their past albums, which doesn't surprise me because, good lord, it's kind of black metal. At its roots, I would say it's black metal, but it's so progressive. There's a little bit of folk metal in here. They use all kinds of like folk instruments. It's good stuff. Most of the songs are pretty lengthy. I think the shortest one's like 4 minutes, maybe 5. Lots of 7, 8, 10-minute tracks on here. It's good stuff. Highly recommended. That's why it's number 9 on the list. Number 8, Tomb Mold with Primordial Malignity. If you like cavernous death metal that sounds like it was recorded in a cave, under the ocean, in the depths of hell, this is the album for you. It's quite a beast, honestly, the first time you try to listen to it. It's a little overwhelming. This came out all the way back in like February, and it took me months to get on board with this, but I don't know, I kept trying. I was like, I'm missing something here, I'm missing something, and it just finally clicked at some point. And now I get it. The riffs are incredible. It does take a couple of listens to actually hear all of it, I would say, because there's so much going on. It's very noisy. This is not something you can really put on like your phone speaker and sit there and, you know, listen to it. It's too much going on for that. but the riffs are fantastic. The vocals, it really sticks to one vocal style on the whole thing, a very deep, guttural vocals. But it works. It works really well. This is one of the best death metal albums to come out this year, and that's saying something because there was a lot of competition. Number 7, Through the Eyes of the Dead with Decimus, if I said that correctly. These guys have come a long way, and it's been a long time. Their last album was like 2010, so they took about a 7-year break. I think they may have had a hiatus in there a little bit where they just weren't doing anything. But man, they came back with a bang. This album is so great. Little bit of history on Through the Eyes of the Dead. They really started as mixing lots of deathcore with melodic death metal, very worshipping of bands like Black Dahlia Murder. What's the other band I'm trying to think of? Lots of melodic death metal in this. Septic Flesh. No, they're not on the list. Sorry to disappoint you. With lots of deathcore, because they came out and really started to gain popularity in the deathcore scene when that was a big thing. So that was a big part of their sound. Not so much anymore on the deathcore part. It's still there, and it's still there enough to where it gives it a nice variety in this. It's not straightforward melodic death metal. There are some chuggy parts, some breakdowns, and it just, at this point, it adds a nice variety to it. You don't listen to this and you're like, that was a deathcore album. You listen to it and you're like, that was a badass melodic death metal album with a little bit of deathcore in it, so it gives it a nice variety. Comes highly recommended from me. Listen to it, put it in your ears. Number 6, Benighted with Necrobreed, another one that came out towards the beginning of the year, and these guys have basically come forward to bands like Aborted, Cattle Decapitation, Exhumed, and said, hey, we're doing this better than you now, so too bad. Very grindy parts in this, lots of that. It's death metal at its roots, and it's fast, and it's really sickening sometimes. The stuff these guys come up with makes you a little like queasy. You hear it and you're like, ooh, that was a bit much. It's a lot to take in at once, but man, is it worth it. It's worth the ride with these guys. If you like death grind stuff, like I said, like Cattle Decap or Exhumed, this is right up your alley. These guys really put out a fantastic piece of death grind, and it paid off for them. Look at it. Their highest honors, number 6 on my list. Doesn't get any better than that. Number 5, Power Trip with Nightmare Logic. I'm sorry. They're on everyone's list, I know. It doesn't make me unique to put them on the list. I'm not some special snowflake for liking Power Trip. It's just universally good. I hate the term instant classic. People use that term to death. They say it and they're like, oh, this album's an instant classic. That's almost never true. It's almost a complete over-exaggeration for something to be an instant classic. And I'm not calling the whole album an instant classic, but I can promise you that in 25 years, people are going to still be playing Executioner's Tax. There's going to be bands covering it. There's going to be thrash bands saying that Power Trip was their inspiration. I absolutely promise it, because this is their second album. This is their sophomore album, and they're on everybody's list. A lot of the time at number 1, or number 1 on thrash albums at least. Thrash to me does not get any better than this. And another great thing about it, it's a little throwback to bands like Sodom, because there's a little bit of crossover in it too, a little bit of DRI. It's not just straightforward thrash, which is why they beat Havoc. Havoc's not on the list, but that was a great album too. Sorry, Havoc. Power Trip. This album, I can't praise it enough. It's great stuff. Hear it, put it in your brain. Number 4, the album responsible for having a lot of YouTube videos demonetized because of the title, Dying Fetus with Wrong One to Fuck With. And yeah, I'm not gonna ride these guys and pretend that that's not just a complete and total tough guy title. But it's true. Do not fuck with these guys. Don't try to write a better brutal death metal album than these guys, because you will fail. Don't try to write a better death metal album that is groovier than R&B, because you will fail. This album is the epitome of how to do a brutal death album that is a little melodic too. Not a little melodic, it's very melodic. The groove in this freaking thing is unbelievable. So often do I worry about bands when they release a fantastic album, because, you know, everyone praises it and it gets all this attention and it's great and oh yeah, it's great. Like this band did with Reign Supreme on their last album. Because then a couple years go by and you're like, alright guys, how are you gonna top the last one? You know, that was pretty great, but you got a big task on your hands. And I thought for sure, I was like, you know, new Dying Fetus album coming out. It's gonna be good, but it's not gonna be Reign Supreme. You know, Reign Supreme was fantastic. At least I thought so, and most people seem to think so. They did it. I'm not sure if it tops it, but it's equal. It's equal with Reign Supreme. So if you liked that one, by all means, this one is for you. Number 3, something a little more lighthearted and less violent. Royal Thunder with, I'll give you $10 if you can read that. It's Wick. No, it's not spelled out that way, but it's Wick. The album's called Wick, okay? Give me a break. I didn't make the damn thing. Royal Thunder with Wick. I might get some shit for even putting this on my list, because some people will be like, oh, it's not a metal album. It's close enough, you know. I'm not going to argue with someone who thinks it's not. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about how great the album is. These guys just get better with every release. Same thing with Dying Fetus. I heard these guys open for The Sword a couple of years ago, and I picked up their last album, which at the moment I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, and I was like, good lord, this is great stuff. And I went back to their one before that, and I was like, you know, that's great too. Not quite as great as this one, but how are they going to top it? How are they going to match this? How are they not going to release something and people go, it's pretty good, but it's not as good as the last one, or it sucks because it's not. Crooked Doors. Crooked Doors was the name of the album that came out before this one. It's not Crooked Doors. Well, goddammit, they did it. They did it with this one. Another female fronted band. Her voice is whatever it needs to be. Does it need to be beautiful for this part? Does it need to be melodic for this part? Does it need to be a little gristly for this part and grungy and to really drive something home? She can do it. She can do whatever it needs to be. And these guys have got some fantastic riffs to go along with it. Some really, the word is slipping my mind at the moment. Just some great stuff. It matches up perfectly with what she's really and truly leading. She is absolutely the leader of this band. Um, she drives them forward and they follow. But they don't just follow, they're right behind her saying, hey, look how great she is, look how great the music is. It all goes together so great. And it paid off for them. They didn't really take any risks on this. It's the same kind of like, I don't know, little doomy. It's not really a doom album by any means, but their same style if you're already familiar with the band or bands like them, like High on Fire. They didn't sway away from that. They stuck to their formula. They know what they can do that's good, and they stuck with it. And it paid off for them. We're almost at the end now. Number 2, anybody who knows me is not going to be surprised. Nightbringers. The only surprise is that it's not number 1, I suppose. But it's not. And it's not a knock to the Black Dahlia Murder at all. Because, let me tell you something. Or let me ask you something, actually. How do you go 8 albums without ever making one that's even close to bad? Or to not great? 8 albums in, and it's just great every time. Their community is always divided on which one is the best one. There's fans for Unhallowed to say, you know, it's never gotten better since the first one. And then there's people who say Nocturnal's the best. There's people who say Ritual's the best. There's fans for every single album. And already for Nightbringers, at only a couple of months old, is there people saying that as well. Because it's an instant classic. I don't use that term in a real way. It's not. But it is great. It's melodic death metal the way it's supposed to be written. Even I've heard some people call it kind of a thrashy melodic death metal. And I don't know about that. I can see why they might say that. Because it's fast. Oh my god, is it fast. Cassidy on the drum kit is so fast. It's unbelievable. Another worry a lot of people had with this band was the departure of Ryan Knight after Abysmal. They thought, there's no way. You know, how are you going to do it again and again and replace band members and not drop in quality somehow, some way? And I think what made it easy on him is that Ryan Knight told the other guys in the band that about a year in advance that he was going to leave. And he handpicked himself his replacement, Brandon Ellis, also from Arsis. Black Dahlia just keeps stealing Arsis guitarists. Ryan Knight was also from Arsis. Go figure. Hey, Arsis can exist solely just to breed Black Dahlia guitarists, and Godspeed, Arsis. And he handpicked Brandon Ellis and said, this is the guy who's going to replace me. And Brandon started working on it and took the job and joined up with Black Dahlia. And he's young. He's like 24 years old, I think, right now. I think he just had his birthday not too long ago. But you'd never know it, because he shreds like he's been doing this for 20 years. Some people argue that his solos are not quite as great as Ryan Knight's. Personally, I don't really feel that way. They're different. I'll give it that. His solos are different. But at the end of the day, they're still great. And another thing I forgot to mention. Brandon Ellis came into the band and said, I'm going to write 4 songs for this album. What kid comes in being the youngest guy in the band and contributes 4 songs for the band? He wrote 4 songs himself. Good work, Brandon. look forward to more stuff from Black Dahlia with Brandon and the band. The only thing I can say is even as a hardened Black Dahlia fan after so many years, even I kind of hope that they do some things maybe a little bit differently on the next one, because they change, they tweak little things here and there from album to album. Each album is unique in its own, but at the end of the day, they're all Black Dahlia. They're all fast melodic death metal albums. Not saying that I want them to just turn into a doom band or a black metal band, but I wouldn't mind seeing them take some risks like Enslaved did, Spice it up a little bit. We'll see. Because we know there will be another album in 2 years, because that's just how they do things. Been that way since the beginning. I was talking a little bit about Alan Cassidy saying how fast he is. But even Alan is not as fast as the number one band on the list. You already know what it is if we're just talking about speed. Archspire. Come on. How was I not gonna get the t-shirt? I went to see him. Of course I had to get the t-shirt. Archspire with Relentless Mutation. I remember where I was when I heard Involuntary Doppelganger. I was driving around at work and playing my recommended weekly on Spotify, and Involuntary Doppelganger was the first single to drop for this album before it came out, and that came up in my recommended weekly. I remember exactly where I was when I first heard that song, because it shattered my brain into a million freaking pieces. I'll tell you that right now. I didn't know that the human brain could comprehend notes coming at you so fast. That can almost sound like a complaint. If somebody's complaining about this album, they could almost just utter the exact same sentence that I did. But I'm not complaining. I'm putting him at number one, best album of the year. Because aside from how blistering and unforgivingly fast the album is, it's so well crafted. For as much as they just beat your face in with ungodly amounts of notes coming at you, they throw just as much melody and variety into the album as well. There's slow parts in just about most songs on the album. Their start and stop style that they write in, where 1 minute the drummer is firing off quad kicks faster than you can think, and the next minute the next second they're just stopped for just a second, just enough for you to understand that this is stop go stop go stop go. They do that a lot on the album. Sometimes they don't do it though. In previous Archspire albums, they I believe used it a little more, and maybe that's what held them back a little bit. They didn't have quite as much variety on previous albums, but they really pulled it off here. Songs like Remote Tumor Seeker, that's one of my most listened to songs since I heard it. I've abused that song to death. I've listened to it so many times. Calamus Will Animate is great. Some people complained about the little machine gun opening to it. And I have to be honest, the first time I heard it I was like, this is a little weird. But I got used to it, and I realized that is part of what makes Archspire Archspire. It makes them unique. Because I'm not going to say they're the first band to ever do that. I know that's probably not true. But it's not used very often, something like that. And they didn't abuse it, It's about a 7-second part in the opening of one song. They did the same thing on the Lucid Collective with Fathom Infinite Depth. The opening to that song kind of had a similar thing going on. You know, they didn't do it exactly the same way, which is good. You know, they didn't do it exactly like they did on the last album. They changed it up a bit. Every decision these guys made with this album is great. I almost didn't have them at number 1 on the list simply for the fact that it's only 7 tracks, and that is just disappointing when you say, you know, best album of the year is only 7 tracks, because you're like, well, that's not that much content, and it could be more, you know. If I'm being perfectly honest, it could, you know, I'd have been happy if they put another song on it. But I almost wonder if it would have just overstayed its welcome, if they would have put another song on it, if it would have been too much, because the album it's the best headache you'll ever have. It's so much notes to take in, and if you listen to the whole thing all in one sitting, if you're not a seasoned veteran of death metal and just absolutely love being hit with a barrage of music like this is, it can get tiring. So maybe they made a good decision to keep it at about 30 minutes and only 7 tracks. But I can say for this, what they gave us in 7 minutes, or in 7 tracks and 30 minutes of music, is worthy of Album of the Year for me. So there you have it. My top 10 albums of the year. I know it sucked, and I'm sure you're telling me how much it's terrible, but you know what? That's my list.